In August, I flew to my hometown of Lafayette, Louisiana, a flight I'd been wanting to do for some time, but I also have family in Shreveport in northern Louisiana and had been wanting to make a trip to visit them as well. With a weekend of perfect weather in late September, I decided to make it happen before the days got too short. Shreveport's airspace is complex, with two Class Charlie airports, one of them a military base, and a Delta within close proximity. I considered landing at downtown Shreveport, but I'd like more experience talking to ATC in less stressful airspace before I attempt that, so I instead planned to land at Minden just east of Shreveport. I'd first make my way north to Rusk County Airport where I'd stop for fuel. This leg would take about 3 hours. From there, it would be a short jaunt to Martin Lake, where I'd cross another coal plant off my list. I'd fly over one more nearby decommissioned plant before heading east to Minden, staying north of the Charlie airspaces. I plan to depart Warden around noon and be at Minden around 5 p.m. For the return flight, I take a slightly more direct route south of the Charlies with the fuel stop at Nacogdoches. I plan to depart at 3 p.m. and arrive at the northwest corner of 99 near sunset at 7:18, following 99 and 59 back to Wharton as the sky grew dark. I was glad to have the option of returning after dark, as this would allow me to have lunch with my family without having to rush to get back in the air. Here's where the Brazos River crosses I-10. Scenes like this one over Sam Houston National Forest were common on this flight. I often found myself having to hop between clearings within densely wooded areas. I've flown over many fossil fuel-fired power plants, but this is the first biomass power plant I've come across. It's the largest in Texas, but still only has a 100 megawatt capacity. As I came into land, I found my electric trim was stuck at my cruise speed of 75 miles per hour. Turns out lowering the wing before the flight without first disconnecting the electric trim pulled the electrical connector in such a way that moving the trim forward in flight after takeoff pulled the wires out the connector. This meant that for the rest of the trip I was flying my approaches fast, but it wasn't that big of a deal in the end. I put my windbreaker on before taking off again, as I was finding I was having to fly higher than usual due to all the trees on this flight. There are still active coal mines near the Martin Lake power plant, but I think this one is in the process of being reclaimed. The approach towards the plant was pretty epic. The plant has a near 2,400 megawatt capacity, making it easily the largest power plant I've flown over, with the exception of the W.A. Parish plant near Houston. This is the decommissioned Henry W. Perky power plant, which had about a 700 megawatt capacity. Shreveport has its own antenna farm near Caddo Lake with 1,800-foot tall towers. The lake straddles the state line, so somewhere around here I crossed into Louisiana. This is an RC airfield, and you can see one model plane zooming about. The X's on the runway let pilots of manned aircraft know it's not a valid landing option. I arrived at Minden as scheduled. I was quite impressed with the facilities here. Since I didn't have a hangar this time, I had to tie down for the night. This would be my first time doing so, and I was a little nervous about leaving my aircraft, but everything was as I left it when I returned the next day. I took off at 3 p.m. as planned. I wasn't sure what this facility was, so I had to get a closer look. Turns out it's a paper mill. This is the northern end of Toledo Bend Reservoir. At 65 miles in length, it's considered the largest lake in Texas, though it straddles the state line with Louisiana. Timber farms were a common sight on this trip. I arrived at the northwest corner of 99 right at sunset as planned. Twilight doesn't last long, so I don't have much experience flying in it. I really enjoyed seeing the lights of Houston's suburbs gradually take center stage as the final rays of sunlight faded. This is where I-10 crosses 99 in Katy. The waning gibbous moon wouldn't rise until after I landed, so everything was pitch black between the lights. I landed at 8:30 p.m. as planned. Trim issues aside, everything on this trip went without a hitch, and I couldn't have asked for better weather. It was my second multi-day trip and the furthest I'd been from my home airport, with the outgoing flight being about 322 statute miles. While not as scenic as my Lafayette trip, there was still plenty to see, and flying over Houston during twilight was a new experience.